Iran's 10th presidential election was held on 12 June 2009, with incumbent Mahmoud Ahmadinejad running against three challengers. The next morning, the Islamic Republic news agency, Iran's official news agency, announced that with two-thirds of the votes counted, Ahmadinejad had won the election with 62% of the votes cast, and that Mir Hossein Mousavi had received 34% of the votes cast. There were large irregularities in the results and people were surprised by them, which resulted in protests of millions of Iranians across every Iranian city and around the world, and the emergence of the opposition Iranian Green Movement. Many Iranian figures directly supported the protests and declared the votes were fraudulent. Among them, many film directors like Jafar Panahi, Mohammad Rasulov, actors and actresses like Pegah Orangarani, Rahman Parchami, sportsmen like the whole Iran national football team who wore green wristbands in their game against South Korea to support the movement. Scholars like Mustafa Tajzadeh, Mohsen Aminzadeh, Akbar Ganji, Mohsen Sazigara, many religious figures like Mohsen Khadivar, Grand Ayatollah Yusuf Sanai, Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Muhammad Dastaib Shirazi, traditional singers like Muhammad Reza Shajarian, defected Basij Iranian Revolutionary Guards like Amir Farshad Ebrahimi, and those who confessed with covered faces. The European Union and several Western countries expressed concern over alleged irregularities during the vote, and many analysts and journalists from the United States and United Kingdom news media voiced doubts about the authenticity of the results. Mousavi issued a statement accusing the Interior Ministry, which was responsible for conducting the election, of widespread election fraud and urged his supporters to engage in peaceful protests. He also lodged an official appeal with the Guardian Council for new and more transparent elections. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei urged the nation to unite behind Ahmadinejad, labeling his victory as a divine assessment. Khamenei then announced there would be an investigation into vote-rigging claims. On 16 June, the Guardian Council announced it would recount 10% of the votes and concluded there were no irregularities at all, dismissing all election complaints. However, Mousavi stated that a recount would not be sufficient since he claimed 14 million unused ballots were missing, giving the Interior Ministry an opportunity to manipulate the results. On 19 June, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei denounced the pro-Mousavi demonstrations as illegal, and protests the next day were met with stiff resistance from government forces, with many reported deaths. The Green Movement of Iran continued its peaceful protests until 14 February 2011 and radicalized itself, demanding a total regime change and departure of Khamenei from power. Background: Ahmadinejad became president of Iran after the 2005 election. The losing candidates at that time claimed irregularities at the polls, but the charges were not investigated. A formal protest to the Guardian Council was made and the group dismissed it without comment. His victory had surprised most observers of the campaign. At that time the reformist camp had mostly either boycotted elections entirely or held back out of disillusionment with past lack of progress. The voting for the 2009 election was scheduled for 12 June 2009 and ended up being extended until midnight that day because the turnout was unexpectedly high. Voting ended up proceeding 4 hours longer than originally scheduled. The president is elected by direct vote, however candidates for the presidency must be approved by the 12-member Council of Guardians. Candidates need to win a majority to become president. Iran has a two-round system. If none of the candidates wins the majority in the first round, the top two candidates will go to a runoff. The first round was held on 12 June 2009. The runoff would have been held 1 week later, on 19 June 2009. All Iranian citizens of age 18 and up are eligible to vote. Both the Iranian Center for Statistics and the Iranian Ministry of the Interior stated that there were around 46.2 million eligible voters. Candidates. On 20 May 2009, the Guardian Council officially announced a list of approved candidates, while rejecting a number of registered nominees. Only 4 candidates were approved by the Guardian Council, out of the 476 men and women who had applied to seek the presidency of Iran in the 2009 election. Approved candidates: Conservatives Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, incumbent; Mohsen Rezaei, former commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and current secretary of the Expediency Council, supported by the Islamic Society of Engineers; reformists Mehdi Karoubi, former Speaker of the Majlis; Mir Hossein Mousavi, the last Prime Minister of Iran. Rejected candidates: Conservatives Rafat Bayer, female Majlis representative from Zanjan; Independents Akbar Alami, former Majlis representative from Tabriz; Qassem Sholeh Sadi, former Majlis representative. Withdrawn candidates: Mohammad Khatami, former President of Iran, endorsed Mousavi. Declined candidates: the following people were said to be possible candidates in the election, but did not register within the 5 days allowed for registration. Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, former President and Chairman of the Assembly of Experts, would have been over 75 years old on the election day, and therefore ineligible to run by election law. Conservatives: Mohammad Bahar Ghalibaf, Mayor of Tehran; Gholam Ali Haddadadol, former Speaker of the Majlis; Mohammad Jaromi, Iranian Minister of Labor and Social Affairs; Ali Larijani, Speaker of the Majlis; Ali Akbar Natig Nouri, former Speaker of the Majlis; Mustafa Pour Mohammadi, former Minister of the Interior; Ali Akbar Velayati, Minister of Foreign Affairs 1981–97; reformists: Mohammad Reza Aref, former First Vice President; Masoum Abtekar; Muhammad Ali Najafi, member of the Tehran City Council and former Minister of Education; Abdollah Nouri, former Minister of Interior, former Speaker of Tehran City Council; Hassan Rouhani, former Secretary of National Security Council. Campaign background: the incumbent was Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. The Iranian reform movement attempted to unite behind a single candidate. Former President Mohammad Khatami had been the leading opponent to Ahmadinejad in some opinion polls until he withdrew and endorsed former Prime Minister Mir Hossein Mousavi. Former Speaker of the Majlis Mehdi Karoubi, another reformist, was also running, as was former commander of Iranian Revolutionary Guard, Mohsen Rezaei, a conservative with a reputation of political pragmatism. Reformist opinions galvanized around him as the election grew nearer. He became the symbol for a groundswell of youthful democratic sentiment, despite his personal background and his political views. The Telegraph described the campaign as unusually open by Iranian standards, but also highly acrimonious. It was marked by heated rhetoric between the incumbent and his challengers. Mousavi and 2 other candidates said Ahmadinejad had lied about the state of the economy, which was suffering from high inflation and a fall in oil revenues from last year's record levels. Ahmadinejad responded by comparing his opponents to Adolf Hitler, adding that they could be jailed for their comments. No one has the right to insult the president, and they did it. And this is a crime. The person who insulted the president should be punished, and the punishment is jail. Such insults and accusations against the government were a return to Hitler's methods, to repeat lies and accusations until everyone believes those lies, Ahmadinejad said. Debates about the economy played the biggest role in the campaign, with the global economic recession looming in people's minds. About 1 in 5 Iranians live under the poverty line, inflation is at about 25%, and unemployment is at over 12.5%. Mousavi advocated further privatization of the economy towards a free market with a tight monetary policy in comparison to Ahmadinejad's populist, fiscal policy, with Ahmadinejad making measures to fight poverty a key principle in his campaign. Mousavi drew his electoral base from the middle and upper classes, while Ahmadinejad drew support from the urban poor and rural residents, civil servants, police officers, pensioners, and others dependent on the government also contributed to Ahmadinejad's base. He made financial support from the business class against him into a theme of attack. BBC News described his campaign as one that foresees the death of capitalism. Mousavi also criticized Ahmadinejad for diplomatically isolating Iran by denying the Holocaust and making anti-Western speeches. He opposed the government's current strict enforcement of Islamic dress and social behavior as well, calling for an end to the regime's vice police. He advocated letting private individuals and groups own Iranian media. Both candidates strongly supported further development of the Iranian nuclear program. However, Mousavi advocated a less combative, intense tone with other nations about the program. He also floated the idea of an international consortium overseeing uranium enrichment in Iran. The BBC stated about Mousavi that, in foreign affairs, he seems to be offering little change on major issues. Council on Foreign Relations senior fellow Mohammad Bazi stated that, if Mousavi wins, it could create a new opening for dialogue with the United States. Ahmadinejad's continued presence would be a major obstacle. Robert Fisk also remarks that a Mousavi victory would mean closer ties to the U.S. The campaign was the most expensive in the Islamic Republic's history, with the two main candidates spending more than tens of millions of dollars in bid to convince voters to support them. Funds were spent on, among other things, a mass distribution of computerized propaganda, such as CDs and DVDs. Another interesting phenomenon which took place during the campaign was a dramatic rise in the number of text messages sent to Iranian cell phone subscribers, from 60 million messages a day to some 110 million. Mousavi adopted the traditional Islamic color, green, as a campaign symbol. Young male supporters wore green ribbons tied around their wrists, and young female supporters wore green headscarves. Activists used the term "change" as his main slogan, chanting phrases such as "Green Change for Iran," "Together for Change," and "Vote for Change." Debates from 2 to 8 June 2009. Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting reported nightly debates on TV channel IRIB3 between two candidates at a time, with each candidate facing the others once. This was the first time Iran had held televised debates between candidates. Each debate lasted for around 1.5 hours. During the debate on 3 June between President Ahmadinejad and reformist rival former Prime Minister Mousavi, Ahmadinejad made accusations regarding former presidents Mohammad Khatami and Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani and the Iranian Revolution. Rafsanjani responded to these charges on 9 June in an open letter to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, requesting that he stepped in to rebuke Ahmadinejad for his comments at the debate. Polling. The opinion polls in Iran were considered unreliable. A number of polls conducted between relatively small voting groups, like university students and workers, were reported as election propaganda. More general polls reported in the media did not state the polling organization nor the basic facts about the methodology. The results showed a high variance and depend heavily on who was reporting the poll. In 2002, the polling organization IANDE and another polling organization was closed and its directors were arrested. The director of IANDE, Abbas Abdi, spent several years in prison. Mousavi's and Karoubi's campaign posters in Tehran claimed that a high turnout would reduce Ahmadinejad's chance of winning the election. Karoubi's campaign manager, Gholam Hossein Karbashi, claimed that the chance of Ahmadinejad losing the election would be over 65% if over 32 million people voted, but less than 35% if less than 27 million people voted. An independent poll, conducted by Terror-Free Tomorrow, the Center for Public Opinion, a non-profit institute that researches attitudes toward extremism, found that Ahmadinejad was leading by a margin of 2-1. 34% said they would vote for Ahmadinejad, 14% favored Mousavi, 2% favored Karoubi, 1% favored Rezaei and 27% were undecided. The poll was taken from the 11th of May to the 20th of May. The poll was carried out by a company whose work for ABC News and the BBC in the Middle East has received an Emmy Award. Polling itself was funded by the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. Writing in the Washington Post, pollsters Ken Ballin and Patrick Doherty have used this to suggest that Ahmadinejad's apparent victory might reflect the will of the Iranian people. The poll was quoted by Reuters, Khaleej Times and Jim Muir of BBC News. However, the Irish Times, while quoting the poll, also pointed out that it was taken 3 weeks before the election, and electoral campaigning in Iran is only allowed for a period of 30 days prior to the election date, which means this poll was conducted only 1 week into the campaigning. Another critic of the poll, Mansour Moadel, pointed out that of 1,731 people contacted by the poll, well over half either refused to participate or did not indicate a preferred candidate. For comparison, the average response rate in U.S. for such telephonic surveys does not exceed 30%. While the minimum response rate for an opinion poll to be considered scientific by many leading academic journals is 50%. A post-election national poll was conducted in late August and early September 2009 by the American polling agency, World Public Opinion, which is affiliated to the University of Maryland. Of the initial 46% respondents of the poll, 27% did not state their chosen candidate, 55% said that they had voted for Ahmadinejad. Both Mr. Karoubi and Mr. Rezaei received minimal support. 87% of respondents replied that they had voted compared to 85% according to the official figures, which is within the margin of error provided. Also, the survey found that 62% of Iranians had strong confidence in the election result, whilst 64% expressed a similar feeling towards the incumbent president. This finding almost exactly matches up with the proportion of the vote that Ahmadinejad received. Polls by Western organizations, polls by Iranian organizations. Irregularities. Pre-election violence. On the 1st of June, a campaign office of Ahmadinejad's primary opponent, Mir Hossein Mousavi, was torched. The office was located in the city of Qum, in northwest Iran. No group claimed responsibility for the attack. At the same time, it was reported that an assassination had been attempted against former President Mohammad Khatami by means of a bomb placed on an aircraft he was to board. Blocking of communications. Mobile phone communications were interrupted in Tehran on election day, and the BBC has stated that heavy electronic jamming was being used to halt their broadcasts. On the 23rd of May 2009, the Iranian government temporarily blocked access to Facebook across the country. Gulf News reported that this move was a response to the use of Facebook by candidates running against Ahmadinejad. PC World reported that Mousavi's Facebook page had more than 6,600 supporters. Access was restored by the 26th of May 2009. Alleged vote rigging or coup attempt. The New York Times quoted an unnamed employee of the Interior Ministry claiming that the government had been preparing its fraud for weeks, purging anyone of doubtful loyalty and importing pliable staff members from around the country. The New Yorker stated that dissident employees of the Interior Ministry have reportedly issued an open letter saying that the election was stolen. The Guardian has also mentioned reports of leaked Interior Ministry figures allegedly suggesting Mousavi had won. Although the article questioned the credibility of the report, The Guardian reported on 17 June 2009 that an Iranian news website identified at least 30 polling sites with turnout over 100% and 200 sites with turnout over 95%. On 21 June 2009, a spokesman from the Guardian Council stated that the number of votes cast exceeded the number of eligible voters in no more than 50 cities, something the council argued was a normal phenomenon which had taken place in previous elections, as people are not obliged to vote where registered. On 18 June, Iranian filmmakers Marjanis Atrapi and Mohsen Makmalbaf appeared before Green Party members in the European Parliament to present a document allegedly received from a member of the Iranian Electoral Commission claiming that Mir Hossein Mousavi had actually won the election, and that the conservative incumbent Mahmoud Ahmadinejad had received only 12% of the vote.